Welcome, everyone, to the Nerd Journey Podcast, episode number 151. We're joining you every week to talk IT career progression and bring you the advice we wish we'd been given earlier in our careers. I'm your host, John White, at VJourneyman on Twitter, joined by my co-host, Nick Cordy, at NetworkNerd_. Hey, Nick, how's it going?
Hey, John, I'm doing great. We are both pre-sales technical engineers with backgrounds in IT operations. We hope our career discussions will be vendor neutral, relevant across disciplines, and remain timeless. If you're enjoying our content, please drop us a positive review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you subscribe, and please rate the show. If you want to get in touch with us, tweet or DM at Nerd Journey. Ultimately, we're just two nerds on a journey.
A journey to career enlightenment.
So let's take a trip.
Awesome, Nick. So this week we are doing part 2 of a two-parter. It is the interview with Duwayne Engelhardt. And if you haven't listened to part 1, I would seriously encourage you to go back and listen to episode 150. It was a great introduction to how he got started in IT, how he got started in technology, and some surprising twists and turns as far as career went.
For sure. I mean, he took the traditional path of teacher to IT operations. That's pretty traditional, right?
Yeah.
I liked the fact that in that previous episode, Duwayne lived through some technology trends and a lot of stressful situations, so definitely go back and listen. It's a little bit different story today, though. Today we're going to learn about his community participation, how he got involved, and how he actually took a leadership position in a community group based in the Spiceworks community. And we'll even check in with Duwayne on how life is after retirement. What's he doing? Is he watching soap operas and eating bonbons? I guess you'll have to find out. Here we go with part 2 of our interview with Duwayne Engelhardt. Earlier you mentioned Spice World. Just so everybody knows, that has nothing to do with the Spice Girls. That is a technology conference for small, medium business IT professionals. It usually takes place in Austin, Texas, but it's part of the greater Spiceworks community, and that's something you have been a large part of throughout your career, Duwayne, or at least let's just say in the last 10, 12 years. How did that contribute to your growth once you became a member of that community?
Well, when I first got in touch with Spiceworks, it was as a replacement for another technology that a large security vendor had purchased and then decided to sunset. And so I was looking for a replacement, found Spiceworks had what I needed, was free. And so I started using it. I have a copy of 0.7 saved somewhere in my archives before even version 1 came out. And so we were using that. I didn't even realize the community was there until it hit almost, 500,000 users. And the community was out there. And then the people I was meeting and talking to in Spiceworks were very knowledgeable, friendly, willing to share. You know, everybody would share what they've done, so you didn't have to go and recreate it on your own. And usually there was, they did it in such a way that even a non-degreed IT person could come in there and replicate, make changes to if need be. If not, you could go back and talk to that person and find out the stuff. I mean, John, you were one of my idols. I followed you for years, and Nick, I followed you as well. And that was for learning and sharing purposes. As the Spice leader for Houston and working with Spiceworks, I met a lot of vendors that could actually help me make progress at the bank and doing various different things. Most of the time I didn't have to create something from scratch because somebody else had done it already. And then, you could go and see what they did, adapt it for your usage. And there was no penalty, no fees, no anything. So it was a win-win. You talk, there's no ROI on free.
It's infinity, right?
Yeah.
So basically it's just, hey, if you can do it, do it. But I got to meet a lot of vendors who had technology that could make our jobs easier as IT pros. And I loved sharing with other IT pros who maybe not have as much time to go and investigate. And, having a spice, what do you call us? The spice groups?
Spice Corps. Because you mentioned Spice Leader, so that is a leader of a Spice Corps.
Spice Corps,
Just explain
right.
what that is for a second for people.
Okay, so the Spice Corps is like a user group. It began primarily with people who use Spiceworks, and the Spice Corps would meet and share their experiences and help new users to Spiceworks get more use out of the application. That's the way it was for many, many years. That's the way we used it. But at the same time, a vendor may sponsor a meeting and get 15 minutes to plug their stuff, and they'd give you pizza, beer, and whatever at the same time, which was a win-win for everybody. They got contact with people who might buy their stuff, and we got access to vendors to actually, talk to, and most of the time we'd get a technical guy out rather than a sales rep out, and we could ask questions that actually could get answered, or answers to questions of things that we were actually interested in, not just price and all the feature sets and things like that, but how does this work? How can I make it work where I'm at? And what do I need to look for in case it doesn't work like I expect it to? So all those answers made it easy to run a Spice Corps in those days, because you had pretty much a meeting set up. A vendor talked for 15 minutes. You eat, you drink, you exchange ideas and talk about that. Talk about Spiceworks. Take one aspect of it, build it out. Who's doing this? Who's not? How can I do that if I'm not doing it? Where can I find help? So your meetings were fast flowed and very interesting. So it was really easy to run back in the old days, but once the application started not to be upgraded quite so often, it got a little harder to bring people in on the Spiceworks side of it. So you had to bring more interest from the vendor side and try to get people to show up, because they had interest in something this vendor was doing that might be different than somebody else. And how can we use it?
In Dallas, we did stuff like go shoot shotguns, tour data centers, go to Dave & Buster's for different meetings, and the vendor sponsor would educate us on the tech. And like you said, bring the technical person who can answer my technical questions about how this works. And that's generally what they would do.
And we'd always ask for the technical guys. If you didn't bring a technical guy, you were lost. The first questions that we asked were usually technical in nature, and most sales reps couldn't handle it. But, we were meeting for our purposes. You take an hour out of an IT guy's day or an hour and a half out of an IT guy's week, that's valuable time. Because, most of us were getting, if we were working on a salary, you're talking maybe $50, $65 an hour. But, this hour and a half at night, that was our time usually, or an hour and a half during the day. And, that's something we'd have to make up somewhere else, because the work's not going to go away. You still got to get it done. So
Yep.
This needs to be fun. It needs to be interesting. It needs to be worthwhile, or people aren't going to show up. Now, I try to make it worthwhile with free beer, but even that has its limits.
The thing that I always found interesting was the community that sprang up around it, because very little of my time was I actually using Spiceworks application. There was some network discovery and kind of, keeping an inventory, network inventory. And then, maybe a little bit of ticketing. But other than that, not a ton of functionality. That's certainly useful. But then the community aspect of it, the online, boards around, networking, storage, compute, virtualization, and so on and so forth, backup, and recovery, all of that, serve to, educate people, in something that, honestly, you earlier on, you said, people who didn't have a degree, where do you get a degree in IT? It's almost all like apprentice, journeyman master, like where you come in and, learn it on the fly. So, you could just accelerate your learning so quickly by asking questions, following the answers that people who had previously asked questions got, and, kind of learning the frequently asked questions. It was really fascinating community. And I feel really bad that, I got so much out of it. I haven't been able to participate in the last 4 to 6 years, really, just because of how busy I've gotten. But it's really amazing to think that such a place can exist.
Spiceworks originally helped me out quite a bit with the ticketing, with the network inventory. In fact, the application it replaced was actually named Network Inventory. And regulators, as you mentioned earlier, they wanted you to know what all the hardware was, what all the software was in the network. And Spiceworks did its scan and could find it for a long time. As Windows was increasing the security on it, it got a little bit harder to do. But you could still do it. And there were some other applications that built up around the Spiceworks community. If you look at PDQ, PDQ.com, without the Spiceworks community, they wouldn't have had the growth that they had. And they were more of an add-on for a long time, or like a co-conspirator. They had their application that kind of helped. Sometimes things that did a little better. Spiceworks promised for years that we could be able to push applications and things like that. Well, PDQ was doing it. So Spiceworks never got to that point, but PDQ did, and PDQ got a whole business out of being a cheap add-on like that compared to Microsoft's applications for doing the same kind of things. But, I met the guys who started the PDQ company back when it was Admin Arsenal, and I met them at Spiceworld. And, they showed me what their stuff could do. And I said, well, yeah, I'll take the free version for a while. And then, it got to the point where we needed to, when regulators, again, you're talking about regulators, they're required to be up to date, and now you have to be up to date within 30 days. I mean, that's the max you can be out of date without getting in trouble. So you've got to have help to get it done. And you've got to be able to scan exactly what's there. And you got to be able to push updates if need be. PDQ can do all that. Spiceworks they got to a point where they don't even scan well anymore. So you were left out with one of the things that you originally looked for it. So we ended up more using Spiceworks only for the ticketing, and that's it. We use PDQ for pretty much everything else as far as the general applications and stuff goes.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, for me, it was 99% community. 99% community.
Well, if you had started out in 2007 with them, back in 2006, 2007, and that they actually were doing some stuff there that was very handy for IT pros that not a whole lot of people were doing at near the price point. I mean, we paid $10,000 plus a year for network inventory from BindView, and then BindView sold, but they wanted us, instead of continuing network inventory, they wanted us to buy their product at $38,000. And it's like, we can't afford $38,000. There's not going to be an ROI for us for like 10 years on this. Until regulators come up, then they probably can give you a better ROI now. Back in 2006 and 2007, there wasn't one. And then I ran across Spiceworks, which could give me almost all the same information that BindView was giving me. And it was free. All I had to do was run it on a server, and so that was no big deal. I had some spare hardware. I could sit around and do that. Oh, and by the way, we can do ticketing on it. I don't have to depend on emails. So, I mean, that was a plus in that respect. So we got two birds with one stone, but this was, 2007 to 2015. The app was a big deal. At some point along, Spiceworks got the idea that they were a marketing company, marketing to IT pros, or they were marketing IT pros to vendors, trying to make a match. And, the focus on the app and helping IT pros went to, hey, how can we get IT pros to match up with the vendor and we can get money from the vendor? It changed the focus. It changed the format. And then pretty much all you had left was the community. You guys and I were friends in the community long before we met each other. Then when we meet at a Spice World and find out how, nice everybody is, you say, oh, I'm coming to Spice World just to meet up with you guys. The heck with
Yep.
Going to sessions or whatever. Or, hey, there's a session here. I don't have to go to the session. I'm meeting up with John. We're gonna talk about this and this and this, and I'll learn more from John than I will there.
Yeah, some great conversations for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and you look at people like Rob Dunn and Scott Miller. I mean, you can learn more outside the session than you can from going to their sessions. I mean, it was the community, because the people shared and they were willing to, and they were all friendly. It was fun. It was good friendship and fellowship. And what else can you ask of life, man? If you have that, you've got it all.
There you go. And to your point, if you're putting time into a participation in a community, that's your time that you're giving back. Just like you said, in the evening time for a Spice Corps, this would be maybe you're taking a break from work, or during work or after hours, you're spending your time putting into the community to help other people. And that's just a really great thing.
Not all of us have the knowledge of Rob Dunn, Scott Allen Miller, and stuff like that. So,
no.
But if we can ask them a question and get a quick answer, save us 3 or 4 hours of research and studying.
Absolutely.
Being able to pick people's brains. Yeah. And you also make those, I think, to your point, you make those friendships, right? It was people in Spiceworks who kicked me in the butt and said, hey, why are you doing what it is that you're doing? Why are you working for that small company? You should dream bigger, right? And actually got me moving in the direction of, thinking about, hey, like what I need to extend my reach, right? I need to think bigger, work for a bigger company, maybe work for a vendor. I mean, all of those things just you don't necessarily have in your mind until somebody says, looks at you, sideways and goes, what is it that you do again? Who do you work for? Like,
Well, you have those options and you meet people and they said, hey, I'd like to hire you over here. I mean, if you look at my situation, when I got in the network administrator job at Wallace Bank, it was like, to get a network administrator job, I would have had to go to Houston, 50 miles away. And this one was 5 miles from my home. They let me work in an office 5 miles from my home. I don't get as much money as I'd get in Houston, but there's a lot of benefits to being able to come home every night at a decent hour and, going to work at a decent hour and doing what you need to do and having the flexibility of getting off when you need to go do something and being close enough to do it. But without having to move, because I'm not one that wants to get up and go. In my career, I've only had 3 jobs, so I wasn't jumping from one to another. I mean, you could, if you have the knowledge, you have the contacts, you can do that. You guys, jump from, small gigs up to some of the biggest ones out there. And, I'm not jealous of you. I'm glad you were able to do it. And but it's not for me.
Yeah, it's so interesting that, that decision point of, how do I make what is it that my next move is, right? Like, what is it that's important for me? You kind of identified that, in a nutshell. Like, I want to be able to, work, 5 miles away from where I live, not 50. And that's a big deal. That's not a 1 hour commute. Right. That's over an hour commute. And to say, okay, that's, call it, an hour and 15, every day, more than 10 hours a week that I'm going to be sitting in a car like that, that's impacting my quality of life. To be able to, have the presence of mind to say, I can stay local, maybe I have to make that trip, once a month, but here's what I get out of it. That's so important. And not everybody has the presence of mind to do that.
Well, I mean, you can learn it early or you can learn it late. eventually you're going to want a place to call home. You're going to want a place where you feel you can relax and get away from things. And, always being at the top is not always where you want to be.
Sure. Speaking of relaxing, Duwayne, I kind of wonder about that transition into retirement. I remember I saw you post about it on LinkedIn. I think you replied to something that I wrote, and you're like, should I still think about this only 6 months away from retirement? I'm curious, how's it been? What kinds of things were you thinking about as you were getting closer to retirement, planning for it, and what's it been like on the other side?
Well, on the business side, I had multiple projects that I wanted to get through. I didn't want to leave them, half done. I wanted to get them completed and documented. And so I could leave it to the next guy to move on from there and not have to go backwards and figure out how to finish something that I'd started. So at work, we started working probably 6 months before I left. What do we need to have done by the time I leave? And I gave them plenty of notice because, they've known for years that I was going to retire at some point. So, we had my successor hired like 3 years before I left. So he could get in and get everything lined up because before that, we were not really a one-man shop, but it was, one guy with the skills and a lot of people who could follow directions well. So not a lot, but a couple of people who could follow directions well if you gave them directions. So we wanted to get that done. On the home side, my wife had quit work, not technically retired, but she was in a situation that the stress was off the wall, wasn't worth what she was bringing in. And she just called one day. She says, "You mind if I quit?" I said, "Nope, go for it." We had transitioned off of her salary for like a year and a half before that and decided that, we're going to retire one day. We want to get used to a lower income. There's some things that we'll just put this money toward those things that you make, whatever you make, it'll go toward this. So we'll have that out of the way when we actually do retire. So she quit a little earlier than we really wanted to, but it wasn't a big deal. It didn't hurt us anything because we were, on that transition stage already. So, when we were getting ready to retire, we looked at our finances and looked where we were with things. We thought we were in pretty good shape, but, we talked to a financial advisor anyway, and he says, "Oh, you're in super shape. Why are you still working?" And it's like, okay, well, I think we're going to be all right. Where can we safely put our money? And so we don't have to worry about it. We might not need it right away. Where can we go? So we set up some stuff. They said, "You won't need it for 10 years. I said, "No, not doing that. I want to start taking extra money next year while I'm still young enough to enjoy it." We had some things that worked to our favor right when I retired. So the financial part went fine. Now I came home and my wife says, "Hey, we're going to have a big blowout for retirement. So we got to get the house ready." And so for the first 6 weeks after I retired, all I was doing, I was working 16 hours a day, cleaning up house, yard, everything that she wanted done. And we had that freeze that came in and wiped out her plants, and she has gardens galore. So it was like, we have to get these all reestablished before the party. And so then we had the party and it rained and about only half the people came. So, and they didn't get to enjoy the gardens anyway because it was raining. Raining. We transitioned, and she said, after the party, you can do what you want. So I was looking forward to after the party. My other retirement thing was to transition into a solo guitar vocal career type deal, to extra money and something that I love doing. And because of COVID coming back and forth like stuff, it hasn't been real active. Some of the performing's picking up now. And so I'm going to transition into that a little bit more. But I have a shirt that says, retirement plan with a guitar on it. So I want to do a little bit more of that than I have been. But I have done a lot of YouTube learning, so I guess you always look for the silver lining. But with COVID, all of the good guitar players were not touring. So for some reason or other, they all picked up YouTube channels, which is maybe even better because you almost always have a front row seat. And, they're doing tricks and stuff like that. And you can see what they're doing, adapt what they're doing to what you do, and, make improvements for yourself. So I've done a lot of that. I mean, I've only been retired for, it's October, 7 months. So far, we've enjoyed it. We've made a couple of long trips, going to make some more. Going tomorrow on a 4-day, and then end of the month, another 7-day, and hopefully in December, a 10 or 11-day trip to Europe, if Europe will let us in. Financially, we're making it. Haven't missed out on anything. My wife still gets what she wants. Her retirement's been sewing. She loves to sew, so she went and bought herself the Maserati of sewing machines. And I encouraged her to get the biggest and the best so she wouldn't have to buy another one later down the road. Then buy it one time, learn what it can do and do it. So she's making quilts, making table runners, placemats, and things like that are quilted. She also is, she won't admit it, but she's a talented artist on wine bottles. So she makes art out of wine bottles and people like them. She gives them away primarily for gifts. She sold a few for a lot less than she should have, but she just enjoys doing it, just the same as I give my music away, same way, I want to play. I don't care if anybody pays me or not. I can afford. They don't have to pay me now. I've got an income. I can go and play just for fun.
Now, if your phone rings late at night, do you get PTSD?
I worry about family because that would be the only reason my phone would ring. I have a 95-year-old mother. I've got an 85-year-old brother-in-law. My oldest sister's 75, and then we go all the way down to my youngest grandson's 5. So if I get a call late at night, I'm worried something happened to somebody.
So you've completely transitioned off worrying about the network is down. That's a sign of growth.
Well, I don't worry about my network being down. I do have a couple of customers. I've got a small MSP helping out some very small businesses. My wife's cousins run a dental office in a neighboring town, and the last time they had upgraded a server was in 2009, and
Ouch.
So they were way behind. I built them a new small network with a virtualized server. So I'm looking at that, maintaining it, and I've stressed them back up. So I had a system going in there would back it up every night and rotates backups and stuff like that. Came back from vacation and something happened on one of the passwords and stuff like that, and there were no backups yesterday.
Ouch.
I mean, not a one except the original ones that I locked away. And so I had to figure out what was going on with that system and restart it. But other than that, then I've got another guy who's been using Outlook for his file cabinet for 10 years, and he had a computer crash, and so the local file was gone except for the backup, which wasn't quite like he wanted it. And so we've been working on that for a couple of weeks now, trying to get him back to where he's happy with his email system. And I'm trying to transition him to saving things outside of Outlook.
It sounds like you're keeping busy even in retirement. Do you have any advice for people who are keeping their eye on retirement? Like I definitely had like some advice like earlier on in my career. Like people told me like, hey, you can't start saving early enough. You're just going to wish that you had started saving and putting money in retirement accounts early. And also like, hey, you're saving for retirement, not for generational wealth, right? Like, unless you like come from a certain, type of, income, you're not saving up for your, great grandkids. So like, to keep that in mind. What are some lessons that you've learned?
Well, I'm not planning on the generational wealth. I'm hoping I don't spend everything I've earned, but I'm the savings early on, put it aside and don't touch it if you can help it. leave it there. I know all sorts of people who are living on Social Security alone. They're not very happy. They can't do what they want to do. Sacrifice a little bit early on and see where it goes. The power of
compound interest.
Compound interest. Thank you.
Time value of money.
I'm getting old, so it's hard. The power of compound interest is just amazing. If you over years, you think 2 or 3 years it's no big deal, but when you turn 2 or 3 years into 20, 40 years, it adds up. It adds up big time. It can make an entire difference on your life after 65. And being able to do what I want to do is half the battle. So you have to plan for something outside of computers. I use computers for news primarily, keeping up with people, and that I don't do as much as I thought I would be doing on the information security side, because I still maintain a membership in InfraGard. And, I've been doing information security for 26 years. And so it's very hard to transition off of that. But I'm not doing nearly as what I thought I would because I've got so many other things that I'm doing and things that I enjoy. And family and friends are a big part of our retirement. The fact that we can spend more time with family and friends and do it when we want to or when they need it is a big deal. It really makes life a lot better.
It sounds like what you're talking about is like autonomy, like the ability to make the decisions that you want to make without really needing to be able to consult anybody else.
Yeah, my wife has a shirt that says, "I'm retired. I'll do what I please."
Duwayne, time's running short. Not for you. I'm talking about like our recording time. I was just wondering if you have any closing thoughts that you can, maybe leave with us as you look back over your career, and before we close off for the night.
I think one of the things that a lot of IT people forget is that you're helping others. If you keep that in mind, that you're helping others, it makes all the work seem less work. And if you keep it up, transition to the idea that I'm not working for myself. I'm not working for the company. I'm working for the people at my company. And it'll make your job go a lot smoother. And then when it comes time to retire, you'll have a lot of friends that will be there for you.
That's amazing advice. Duwayne, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, we really appreciate it, Duwayne.
I enjoyed it. And good to see you guys again.
Nick, every time we talk to somebody that we know from Spiceworks, it brings a smile to my face. Always like touching base with that community again.
Absolutely. Good times, man. A lot of good people that we've met from that community that have helped us in tremendous ways that we can't even describe.
Yeah, I will tell you something that happened to me today that I didn't talk to you about yet. One of my colleagues at Google Cloud sent me an email. It was a screenshot. He's like, "Hey, look what I tripped across today." And it was a discussion of a topic that he was investigating at Spiceworks, where I was part of the conversation. Just really cracked me up.
That's so cool.
I wish I had time to participate a little bit more instead of just lurking the way I've been doing. But I'll try to work it in.
It's hard when you have your head in the cloud, man.
Maybe it's a 2022 goal.
There you go. Somebody note that down.
What did you like about Duwayne's interview?
Here's what I'm thinking. That financial advice that he gave, to me, goes back to don't skimp on the backups. He said that in episode 150, right?
Yep.
And to me, part of your backup plan, at least for yourself and for your retirement, is making sure that you're financially ready. And as you heard, he and his wife did a great job of making sure they were ready. And I thought he made a great point about wanting to take more out while he could actually enjoy it and use it.
Right, right. I really love the idea that he's, spending his retirement actually living and not, constantly worrying about like, what if, like, what if we run out of money? Like, we need to pare way, way back. Like part of that is doing the planning up front, right? And saving for retirement, early on in your career while you have that time for compound interest to work for you. I also really enjoyed him modeling what retirement can look like, right? You don't have to stop doing interesting things in technology. You can still consult with people who are interested in paying you for your knowledge and paying you for your time. It's just that it's not something where the choice is taken away from you. You're choosing to do it. And if you choose not to do it, then you can go on a trip with your family. You can hop on a cruise. You can watch soap operas is, just one choice. It didn't seem like he was making that choice.
No. I even like the fact that his wife picked up a nice hobby as well, getting into arts and crafts and doing a lot of sewing. They're keeping their mind sharp, and I think that's a great thing to do. And when you've worked all your life and learned so many things, I like the commitment to not stopping that learning.
Yeah, yeah. Just because you're retired doesn't mean that you stop doing all the things that brought you joy, for your entire life. In fact, you can double down and focus on those things, and find, just the things that really, like I said, you enjoy them and you don't have to do them for work. You're doing it purely for the pleasure and the mental stimulation of it. So, I just really loved hearing about that.
Yeah. And that ties in really well in an interesting way with his discussion of his job choice at the bank that was 5 minutes away compared to a long drive that would have paid more money.
Yeah, that decision to review what was important to him and to his family and then make a conscious decision, like that was so interesting. And, we talk about it. We say, what is it that's going to make you happy? Is it a bigger title? Is it more money? Is it, managing other people? Is it, glory and fame? And here's somebody who actually went through that process and decided, I'm not going to be a job hopper. I don't need to move to a bigger city to get, to operate on a bigger stage. I'm really, really happy with my quality of life here and everything that I'm doing here. And I don't want to compromise that. And he's happy, right? You heard it. It made him happy.
And that's a great thing. And I don't think everybody weighs all those when they need to make a decision like that. It's hard too, because if you have a job offer presented, you don't have a whole lot of time to decide what you're going to do. 48 hours, maybe 72. Who knows? It could be less in some situations. Hopefully you've have some realization of what those priorities are before you're presented with options and decisions.
Yeah, I think it maybe goes back to, kind of doing a career check-in. And maybe that's an idea for a future episode of like, hey, let's, check in, figure out, what it is that I want to do. How does that work with what the members of my family want to do? What's the next step? What are the things that, we would, enjoy doing? Changes that would be okay, changes that would not be okay. And then, I think maybe it kind of fits in with that Dreaming in Bands episode that we did, right?
Episode 19.
Yeah, like what, where are the places in the world that I would enjoy living while I was doing my job? Like what are the types of commutes that I'd be willing to do? Who are the types of people that I'd be interested in working for? And then when those opportunities come up, you have at least a basis to go back and look at and not have to, do everything from scratch. But we shouldn't do that episode right now.
No.
We should just plan to do it in the future.
I agree with you. And I would also encourage listeners, if you haven't listened to, I think it's episodes round about 53 through 58 about unexpected career opportunities. There's a little bit of that discussion in those episodes that John's talking about here.
Nice. Yeah. Excellent. Well, is there anything else that's popped into your mind, or are you ready to get out of here?
Other than saying a big thank you to Duwayne for sharing his experiences, I'd say that's it for me.
Nice.
Just a reminder, we want people to subscribe and give us a positive review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. Please rate the show. We want to know if we're being helpful and are always looking for interesting questions to ponder. We're collectively on Twitter @NerdJourney.
All right. Farewell, listeners. Tune in next time as the journey continues. I'm John White @VJourneyman. For Nick Cordy @NetworkNerd_, signing off.
Adios.